If you clicked on this video, yes, you lovely person, chances are you have dyslexia, you know someone with dyslexia, or you're just a curious soul who has a good heart. In which case, welcome friend. Today I'm going to show you something I think is pretty special, and I'm going to bring in a special guest too, so stick around. Almost 1 year ago, I published a video all about an experiment Bloomsbury was doing by releasing dyslexia-friendly editions of some of their books. I am lucky enough to have someone in my life who has dyslexia, so I bought 2 of these editions to see what he thought. I'll leave a link to that experiment video in the description if you want to check it out. Since then, Bloomsbury has said the reception and impact of their experiment was positive, so they've released 11 more titles this year. I'd like to note that these are specifically aimed at adults, which is pretty special considering most dyslexia-friendly books are aimed at kids. You may recognize some of these titles because they also happen to be bestsellers or award winners. Now, because I put together my video last year, Bloomsbury got in touch and sent us a selection of these books to include in a video. I say us because I'm not dyslexic, but my husband is, and they specifically sent them for him to read. In a minute, we'll look through them with my husband, but first, let's talk about dyslexia and how it shows up for readers. Dyslexia is a lifelong condition that affects reading, writing, spelling, and speaking. 1 in 10 people are dyslexic, which accounts for over 6 million people in the UK alone. Not every one of these people has been diagnosed, which means you might have dyslexia or you might know someone who does, and may not even know it. In terms of reading, there are plenty of people the world over who either struggle, persist, or just plain give up on reading, citing their dyslexia for doing so. Alongside other strategies like audiobooks and font changes on e-readers, these books could be a great solution. After all, as one post said, it's not the reading we hate, but the feeling of inadequacy and failure that comes with not being taught to read in the way our brains are wired to learn. Dyslexia is a spectrum, so these might differ depending on where you land on that spectrum. But if you have dyslexia, when reading, you might confuse very similar words like cat and cot, lose your place or miss lines, need to reread paragraphs to understand them, read slowly, or find it hard to maintain focus, especially if there are distractions. The visual on screen right now is a good example of this and how they can show up for people with dyslexia. None of this means you can't or don't enjoy reading, it just means it can be more challenging. Okay, so if we're looking at ways or tools of helping making reading more enjoyable or easier for people with dyslexia, these dyslexia-friendly editions could be a great addition. So let's take a look. These are a couple of the dyslexia-friendly editions that Bloomsbury sent us, and one of the first things you'll notice is that they are quite large and very, very thick. In comparison to a mass market paperback, you can see the size difference and the general thickness difference. If we open one of these up, let's go for 3-body problem. Not only is the font larger, but the spacing between letters is also increased to make it much easier and clearer to read. The next thing you'll probably notice is the cream paper and the blue text. These in combination allow for contrast while reducing glare compared to the black and white that most other books use. If I bring in Bunny, you'll notice that there are no italics in the book and instead bold is used to provide emphasis instead of italics. And this is because when italics is used for somebody with dyslexia, sometimes those words can run into each other and it makes them very difficult to read. So in this case, bold is used instead. I go into detail on the font choices in my previous video, so make sure to check that out. But now we've taken a closer look, let's bring on somebody who can actually test them. As I said earlier, I don't have dyslexia, but my husband does, so come on in.
Hi.
This is Lewis. In the last video we did about a year ago, he tested out the dyslexia-friendly edition, so we're going to do that today. Say hi.
Hello.
Okay, first I want to ask you a few questions. So, are you much of a reader?
Not typically much of a reader. I read a little bit of Horus Heresy, but more recently I've been reading a lot more comics because they're quite easy and friendly to read. There's quite not too much like writing usually, so.
So compared to last time, you've been reading more?
I'd say I'd be reading more, yeah.
Yeah, because in the last video, Lewis said that he wasn't really much of a reader. He kind of dipped in and out of it, but not really read a lot at all. And now he's been reading a lot more, mostly thanks to comics, right?
100%.
Okay, so how does dyslexia show up for you? Not just in reading, but you can say as much or as little as you want.
When it comes to reading, it gets quite tiring. I find like when I read, I get very tired from doing it, and if I'm doing it for long periods. Font is usually pretty important, and the main which I get, which I always have, is that I'll be reading a bit of a paragraph or a sentence, forget where I am, then have to go back to the top and then repeat that over and over, which just gets tiring. So it can make reading quite slow.
Okay, do you think growing up your reading habits might have been different if you had access to things like e-readers where you could change the font as you were reading, or say these dyslexia-friendly editions that you could read when you were younger?
Yeah, maybe. When I was growing up, I'd probably read a bit more. I'd read probably every time before I go to bed, because there'd be sort of like more friendly books for my age. But at the same time, probably back then there weren't mobile phones, so I wouldn't be wouldn't be watching YouTube videos or anything before going to bed. So I'd have to read to fall asleep. Outside that, I probably wouldn't read that much before going to bed. So yeah, it might have made a big difference.
Right, so let's take a look at the books. We've got the books that Bloomsbury sent you. So let's get your kind of first impressions. Full disclosure, we have had a little peek. And last year we did look at the dyslexia-friendly editions that they released last year. And these are ever so slightly different, but we'll get your initial impressions.
It's a very heavy box. We have Just Kids. We have a very pink version of Want. Then you get a card with the entire collection and all the different bits and pieces. We have Collide, which is quite a chunky version of Collide. We have Bunny, nice bright pink bunny. And then finally coming out of the box, it's the biggest version of the 3-body problem you have ever seen.
So do you want to take a look at the 3-body problem and like look inside?
Actually surprisingly light. Like I was expecting a book of this size to feel quite heavy, and it's actually surprisingly light going through the pages. I don't know if the paper is thinner, thicker, or if that's just how my head's handling it.
They didn't say anything about the thickness of the paper, just the color of it.
Yeah, the color, you can tell that the papers are different, slightly different color, and the font is much larger. It's a really nice font to read. It's in a slightly off blue color as well, so it makes it quite easy to read. Better line space, and that's probably the other one which you might notice. You probably don't see it there, but you can see there's a lot more line spacing, so you're probably not going to get lost too much. The one thing with it as well is that it does make the paragraphs look like they're all the same. Like all the paragraphs are exactly the same. Like Bunny, which is just there in the box. So that again, you can see that the paragraphs all sort of merge together, but...
Is that a bad thing?
Not particularly. Yeah, it's just if you go, I want to read to the end of a paragraph, it might be a little bit trickier, but...
Because they take up more visual space.
Usually I don't read to the end of a chapter. I read to the end of a paragraph and I go, that'll do. And I follow the page.
Right. One of the things that they did say is that any text that would usually be italic is bold instead.
That explains. I saw a whole page that was bold.
Yeah, it's not like a print. In that one, it might have looked like a print error.
Yeah, it was just a massive. It was like a whole bold page. I was like, oh, okay.
And do you think that is a good thing?
Yeah, bold's easier to read than italics.
Yeah.
As much as I like italics for emphasizing and stressing words.
I think it's just whatever was in italics is now bold. Although one of the things I was wondering was if it was bold in the original book, then the difference between what is bold and what is italics in terms of like how a book works.
3-body problem might be a bit of a weird example for this, but because it has footnotes, the footnotes are done as well. So you get some pages that are almost a third of it, the whole page is a footnote.
This one might be an interesting one to look at because I'm not sure if that's YA.
That's Collide.
It might be adult, I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's a lot more dialogue, which it's the line spacing, I think, that makes it the easiest to read. It's got a nice spread of line spacing across it.
Now, I think it's important for us to do a test to see how these stack up against a mass market paperback book.
It is Horus Heresy's False Gods.
Do you want to just open up the book and show? So the font is very small, the lines are very close together. So we'll do an experiment where we'll read for 5 minutes from this book first, and then we'll read for 5 minutes from the dyslexia-friendly edition, and then we'll get your thoughts and opinions and how it went and how far you got as well. I think that'll be interesting. So we'll do that and then we'll come back.
A few moments later.
Okay, so we're back from the experiment where Lewis read 5 minutes of one book and 5 minutes of the other.
Yep, so I got 11 pages of Want done, and I got 6 pages of False Gods done. Although pages don't really matter too much, it's about, I guess, the number of words. I'd say that in Want, I could read it quite comfortably. I could hold it like a lot further away and be able to read it. I'm also wearing glasses, so, you know, that probably means that something there. But with Want, because the words were much larger, I could hold the book further away from my face. Whereas with False Gods, I was like glued into it basically. So that definitely made a difference. I found I pretty much read every word that was in Want. Whereas in False Gods, there were words in like half sentences that I would skim over and kind of just go, oh, I kind of know what's happening in that. I definitely noticed that would happen. There's a difference between the two. But this was a lot easier to read than this one. But I also really like the source material in this one, so...
I guess with the books that we were sent by Bloomsbury, they're probably not for your demographic, target market, whatever. What did you think of the book in general?
Yeah, it was interesting. I got, 11 pages in.
Yeah.
I didn't realise... It was the person that does the thing in that TV show.
Yeah, Sex Education.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah. What was like your comprehension like of absorbing all of the text? And because you said that you skipped over some of False Gods, do you think that means that you might skip over important parts, or is it just specific words?
I think I'd then reread it, so if I'm like, that's important, I'd go back and then reread that sentence, whereas I'm like, oh, okay, this is just describing what the pen is like in the room. So I'm like, okay, I can skip that bit. But with this, I definitely read every single word that was in there.
Do you think if these books were made into dyslexia-friendly editions, that would be something you would buy?
Potentially. I know that they do, I think all of these have audiobook versions, so I think that's kind of where they've pushed it instead, is into audiobooks rather than dyslexic-friendly books.
Yeah, well, this is pretty much for adult dyslexia-friendly editions. I'm pretty sure it's just Bloomsbury doing that right now, and it's kind of a small run. So other publishing companies, because what publishing company is that?
The Black Library.
Black Library.
Yeah.
So they would have to make that decision on their own, and yeah, they might not choose to do that, but the audiobooks is a good option if you have dyslexia, especially for books like this where the font is so small. I think I would even struggle to read that. You would have to have it right up against your face, and that would strain an average person, and if you're dyslexic, that would be even worse. In general then, do you think that these are, if somebody is an avid reader, or just say they've got dyslexia, and they've fallen out of love with reading, but it's not because, books aren't really their thing anymore, it's because they would like to read, but they struggle. Do you think these would help with that?
Oh yeah, these definitely would help with that. So it was just a lot more comfortable to be able to read it. I could hold it at quite a bit more of a distance rather than holding it like glued to my face. So yeah, this was a lot easier to read. I could take more in.
They are slightly more expensive than the normal mass market paperback versions of the same books, but looking at the prices, they're only slightly more expensive, which I think is pretty reasonable given the amount of paper that's used to create the books. Having said that, it's a bit like an audiobook where the longer the audiobook is, the more expensive it is. And that's the same for these as well. If you get some of the shorter books that they've released, the price is closer to the mass market paperback. Whereas some of the thicker ones, like I think 3 Body Problem, the price is £2 to £3 more, I think. So that's something to bear in mind, that they cost more the thicker they are, and that 3 Body Problem is a very thick book.
A very heavy book.
You might like that one though.
Yeah, maybe.
We'll quickly compare them to the previous ones. This was in the previous run that they did about a year ago, and compared to the new ones, the spine in particular is, I think this is cleaner.
Yeah, I'd say this makes it definitely it's clearly a dyslexic-friendly book.
Yeah.
Whereas this one kind of looks like the same book, but just with a different cover on the front. That's a problem.
Yeah, these essentially have their own special spine, and then they've got a little image at the top, which is the cover of the book, or a little snapshot of the cover, I guess. And then they've got dyslexia-friendly edition down here, whereas these ones are kind of just really thick-looking versions of the same books. So if you were to go into like a bookstore, these would be much easier to find. Anyway, thanks so much for being on the video.
Thank you for having me.
So what do you think? Would you buy these editions either for yourself or for a loved one? Or what do you think in general about these editions? I would love to know, so leave me a comment and give Lewis some love there too. I'm sure he would like that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time for another video.